in Brazil. Supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who lost his election last year, stormed the capital today.
This comes a week after the new president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, was sworn in. Government leaders say at this hour they have regained control of the three main government buildings. And here to break this all down for us, CBS 2's Sabrina Franza. Sabrina, good evening.
Hi, Chris. Dana, right now, local Brazilian officials say they have at least 400 people in custody. Massive crowds defacing government property buildings belonging to the three branches of the Brazilian government, all in defense of a former president. The former president's party calling this, quote, a sad day for the Brazilian nation.
What started off as peaceful protests, Brazilian officials say, ended anything but. Demonstrators refusing to accept the transfer of power from former President Jair Bolsonaro to newly sworn-in President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. They climbed on roofs, windows, smashed, defaced the buildings lining Brazil's Three Powers Square, overwhelming the center of Brazil's democratic government, the Supreme Court, Congressional Building, and Presidential Palace for hours.
And once they entered the chamber, some of the very specific actions that they took were very much comparable to what we saw in Washington, D.C. in 2021.
Stephen Caliendo is a professor of political science at North Central College.
Does it speak to people having less faith in democracy?
It's hard to say that it's widespread. I mean, certainly there's always been people who have been concerned about democracy, and not just from the ideological right. This was a right-wing movement similar to what we saw in the United States. But folks on the left have been concerned about democracy in various ways as well.
Current President Lula da Silva called demonstrators, quote, fascist fanatics, while former President Bolsonaro reportedly remains in Florida, where he flew for the inauguration. Bolsonaro did not explicitly concede that runoff election, but did say he would cooperate with a transfer of power, tweeting today that peaceful protest is part of democracy, but this is, quote, exceptions to that rule.
He came out immediately and distanced himself and said he condemned it, which is, of course, very different than what Donald Trump did on January 6, 2021.
President Biden weighing in on Twitter as well, saying he, quote, condemns the assault on democracy and on the peaceful transfer of power in Brazil.
The results of the election in Brazil were legitimized by politicians across the political spectrum there, though they were close, less than 2 percentage points in that runoff election. At this hour, it's not clear if there were any injuries in all of this, though all three buildings were believed to be largely empty for the weekend. In the newsroom, Sabrina Franza, CBS 2 News.
We'll, of course, keep tabs on this one. Sabrina, thanks very much.